Hello, everyone. My name is Elisa Morrison, and today I'll be talking to you about AI for rapid product iteration. Do any of you feel like you are drowning in AI? Every time you log on to LinkedIn or open a newsletter or listen to another podcast, somebody is mentioning a new tool that you could or should be using. If so, this is the session to hopefully help you weed through all of this chaos and find some really practical recommendations for tools that I found that help me iterate and get feedback more quickly when creating products. A quick look at what I'm going to talk about today. I'll give you a quick intro into who I am so you have a bit of context to me and how I work. And then I'm going to explain kind of the focus of this session and the specific use cases I'll be looking at for AI. And then I will share the top tools that I've found to be helpful. I have vetted and tested over 20 different AI tools specifically for design and research. So I'll be sharing what I found to be most useful and the ones that I'm using on a day-to-day basis now. And then lastly, I'll share tips and tricks that I found helpful to more efficiently experiment with AI tools and quickly find out if they're going to do what you need or if you should look elsewhere. So a bit about me and my background. I am a UX and digital product designer at Energy Saving Trust. A lot of my work is focused on conducting research around what users need and want, creating prototypes that we can show to users and stakeholders to get their feedback. I also do a lot of work educating and building our internal design capabilities. I lead design workshops and I led the team to create our design system. So a lot of my focus is on not just doing the design work, but also thinking about how as a team we can work more effectively to create more user-centered designs together. I have worked for 5+ years in UX design, and my focus has been in industries and domains that deal with more complex ideas, energy, cybersecurity research around emerging technologies like blockchain and quantum computing. I would say the main idea I wrestle with regularly as a designer is how do I make a concept that's really abstract, really concrete and easy for somebody to understand so that they can make good decisions. A quick look at the AI landscape now before we dive in. I found this really interesting. This is a report from Figma in 2024, and they interviewed different designers on how they use AI for their work. And they found that the majority saw a slight or no impact actually from these tools. So there's all this hype, but the actual practical aspect is still yet to emerge. So my goal when I set out to explore different AI tools specifically for design was how can I rein in this unbridled potential of all the things it can do into something immediately useful, practical, and most importantly, fits with how I need to work and the constraints that I work within. So the whole focus of this talk is how can we use AI to help us iterate on our products better in a way that we can ensure at every stage we're building the right thing for users that's going to help solve their need. So is there a way that we can use AI to find that out earlier on in the product lifecycle? So when we look at a design process, this is the lean UX process. You typically go from thinking about the problem, what is the problem? Then you're going to make your solution, and then you're going to check if it's the right solution. So what this typically looks like for design, even before it gets to development and gets launched into the wild, in order to check if you're making the right product, you're going to create a prototype in that make step. And then to check it, you're going to share that prototype with users. and have them interact with it to see if it solves the problem you thought it would. And then you're going to take that information and go back to think and make it better. And the more that you can cycle through, make, check, think, etc., the more confident you can be by the time you launch your product that it is going to solve the problem that you thought it would. Just a quick note, I did attempt to have AI generate that lean UX diagram you just saw. However, I wasn't able to quite get it to work. You'll notice the arrows are going in funky directions. So I've, again, found use cases where it works really well and does what I need it to. This was unfortunately not one of them. So AI, lots of hype, lots of new tools, new capabilities, new, you name it. One thing that I face as a designer is I'm constantly being bombarded and seeing lots of new tools that work really great if you're a freelancer and you're working from scratch, new design, you have no existing tech stack to work with. There's no predefined brand or design system. Everything's from scratch. And you can use a AI generation tool to create your app or website design, everything from the ground up. Really great. However, for me, that doesn't work. I would say 95% of my projects or more are usually redesigning something that already exists or making something new that fits into a system of things that already exist. So there's an existing tech stack. There's a predefined brand. There's a bunch of different constraints that I have to take into account, which makes it really challenging, but also fun. But it does beg the question, how can I fit a rogue AI into a system where I can't just have it generating things that will be completely random and new? I need it to work with what I already have. In my quest to find the answer to this question, I experimented with 20 plus different AI tools, either focused on AI tools for design on the visual side and creating user interfaces, or on the research side. I have a link to the Google Sheet with the list of all the tools that I tried, my notes, my rating, what I found worked or didn't. So you can find that through the slides after this session if you want to take a look at that. One thing that I took away from all of this was whenever I find myself designing something and I'm asking the question, I wonder how other people have solved this problem. That's a really great use case for using AI, because AI is taking the average of everything that's on the internet and the web, all of the existing information, and it's kind of giving you the most, the most neutral version, the most average of all of these different solutions. So it's really great for that use case. That said, let's dive into the tools that I recommend for the different phases of design and product development. So if you have thought about a problem and then you're like, okay, we think we have a solution, you want to check that with users. Before, you might have had to spend a lot of time creating a prototype. You still will need to create prototype and it might take some time. However, there are several really good AI tools out there that can help you get a pretty good interactive prototype without a lot of time or needing to understand a specific design tool or knowing how to code. So this is, I think, a really valuable tool, not just for designers and developers, but anyone working on products where you can take your, hey, I wonder what if we did this to solve the problem? And you can really quickly get a rough version of your idea simulated and then be able to share that with users. So I'm going to share actually an example of this in a moment, but the two tools that I would like to call out are Vercel and Bolt.new. There's also a third one called Lovable. All of these do pretty similar thing where you can upload a screenshot of a web page or a design that you're working on. It could be a rough sketch on paper, and then you can ask it to redesign that. You can also, without any sort of image reference, tell it what to do, and it will not only create a design, but it can create a series of web pages, and it can make it somewhat interactive. That way it can kind of simulate more closely the real experience. So I'm going to show this to you actually right now. So if I go to, this is what Vercel looks like. What can I help you ship? I'm going to ask it a question, and I have a predefined prompt actually that I already wrote. So I'm going to copy this here. And what I want it to do is I want to give it this screenshot of this Craigslist website, and I want it to make some design recommendations for me. I want to explore how I could make this better. So I'm going to ask it, redesign this page to be easier to scan. For each category, show the approximate number of listings and the type of items within each category. So we have all these categories, and I kind of, want it to look a bit cleaner, a bit better. So I'm going to attach the screenshot that I took earlier to there, and I'm going to hit send. So while that is thinking, I'm going to go over to another chat where I actually already did this, and I'm going to show you what it created for me. So based off of that prompt, it generated this UI, and you can see it's got these little cards that I can kind of hover over. There's a little bit of interactivity. It doesn't have all of the content that was on the existing site, but it has the main categories, and it gives me a good kind of idea or something to work with. I could show this to users and ask, okay, do you prefer this layout or the existing one? So that's already pretty nice. I'm also going to, I can also ask it to make edits. So if I wanted it to maybe be able to simulate what it's like to post an ad, I could ask it, hey, now I'd like you to make it so I can post an ad and show me what the result page would look like. And it would do that for me. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to do that here, but I'd encourage you to explore that on your own. So that is Vercel. And again, it's a really good place. Instead of maybe going to Dribbble or competitors' websites, you can use these tools to either create a prototype or get ideas for kind of seeing your idea come to life and see if that's the direction you want to take things. So yeah, what I just showed you was the Vercel demo for Craigslist. When it comes to creating visuals, images, and illustrations, I often find personally that this can be a limiting factor when it comes to creating prototypes. They take a lot of time generally. You can use stock images and imagery, but there's constraints around that. And sometimes visuals are a very important part of your prototype because they might be not just decorative, but actually creating an added layer of understanding for your users. So you might need to depict what solar panels and a wind turbine looks like alongside your written content, and you might want to test that in your prototype. So a tool that I found really helpful for this is called Recraft.ai. I've tried some different image generation tools. This is the only tool that I've found so far that you can really limit it and constrain it to a specific style. So I was able to upload images from our design system and then have it generate new illustrations or icons that fit within that system. However, the best thing is you're able to very easily then export these images to a design tool and then make further edits and refine it. Since typically you wouldn't, for many of them, I wouldn't necessarily go with the final output. There might still be a few adjustments. Whereas some of the other image generation tools I looked at didn't have that capability to really edit the image. So this is a really good one I would recommend checking out. Tools that I tried around this kind of prototyping space that were just okay and you might hear about are Galileo. I actually did really like this for coming up with if I want to explore different UI layouts and get a bit more of a visual kind of flair. But again, it doesn't follow a specific branding, so that can make it harder. Again, if you're working within a design system, you don't necessarily need it to suggest a bunch of different colors to you because you already have your set color palette you're working with. Also, it's not interactive. UI Izzard is probably my least favorite. I didn't use their latest version, but I wasn't really motivated to because I wasn't a fan of their existing interface. And then lastly, I tried Midjourney. I spent a lot of time trying to get it to work for me and edit images in there, and it just didn't do what I needed it to. So yeah, take that as you will. When it comes to conducting user research, so you've created your prototype and now you want to share it with users. If you're very comfortable interviewing users and conducting user testing, that's great. However, if you're short on time or you're kind of new to this space, I've got 3 tools that you can use to help you. The first one is Perplexity AI. Sorry, I would recommend this as a tool to research what questions people are asking on social media. So I'm able to ask it, hey, what are the most common questions people ask when buying a bicycle? According to Reddit and Quora, like what's the word on the street? And it's really good at pulling out and citing the different themes that it notices across the internet. So really good kind of almost precursor research tool before you start interviewing people. If you want a tool that actually interviews users on your behalf, there's a really good tool called Wondering AI. And it's an AI bot that can actually ask users questions. And then based off of their response, it can tailor follow-up questions. So you can set kind of a rough structure for the usability test and a test script, but it can also go off script like a real person would. I tried this and it works pretty well. And I think I would definitely explore it again. There's still instances where I would want to make sure that an actual person is conducting the interviews to catch more of those nuances. But if you want to get some really quick feedback within a day, you can have it conduct 5 interviews. And again, you're not having to be there on the call with the users while that testing is happening. So that is definitely a resource I would recommend exploring. And then lastly, ChatGPT can create test scripts and materials that you might already use a template for anyways. So if you're needing to come up with kind of the series of questions that you would use to test a prototype, ChatGPT is great at doing that for you. Of course, you always want to check the outputs of all these. I should add for all of these tools, for the prototyping tools, I have tested it for real projects. For these user research, I've tested it on more experimental kind of side projects, not for my real workflow yet. So just to know, however, I did find the initial results from all of these quite promising. When it comes to analyzing research, I have used these tools, some of them to actually assist me in my research workflow versus just kind of testing it out on some test research projects. Particularly with Miro analysis, if you have notes that you take in Miro, either they're sticky notes or in a doc in there, they have an AI tool that will summarize it and highlight key issues or themes. This worked really well for me. I'd definitely recommend it, especially if you're taking notes while testing a prototype by annotating a screenshot of that prototype. ChatGPT is good. You can anonymize your interview transcripts, feed it to it, and then ask it to extract themes backed up by quotes. And then lastly, if you are using that tool I mentioned, Wondering AI, they also have an automatic analysis of the video and audio recordings. I think that's quite nice because for the other tools, you have to have the written transcript to analyze. But this is one of the few, and there's a few other tools as well that also analyzes the audio and video, because sometimes a user will be pointing at something and say, I don't understand this, but they might not verbalize what they're looking at. So that's an important thing to call out. Again, if you are testing out ChatGPT and Wondering AI and some of these tools for analysis, you can always use test transcripts or podcast or video transcripts that are publicly available to test these things out. That's what I did. Use something that you know, and that way you can validate if the results are what you would expect before using it on maybe a little piece of mini research to actually see what it would be like in real life. So to summarize all of that, the top tools that I would recommend if you're going to focus on just a few are one, VO by Versal to create prototypes, to make your solution come to life. Similarly, Recraft AI if you need images or illustrations in your prototype. To actually facilitate the research, Wondering AI can do that on your behalf and analyze it for you. And then if you just need a kind of general research assistant, classic ChatGPT can do a really good job of that for you. So again, these are linked except for ChatGPT, because I'm assuming you've visited that before and know that. But if not, quite easy to find, unlike these others. All right, so before I wrap up, I just want to touch on a few things around how to experiment and what I learned from trying a lot of different tools back to back, both on test projects and within my actual workflow as well. Two things to really focus on. Start with what you know, always. And then assess what it gives you. Outputs can look as deceptively useful. So you really want to make sure that you start with something where you already know the outcome. That way you can see how accurate it's probably going to be. Maybe it gets it 80% right or 50% right. And if you know that ahead of time, that'll help you better check the results that it gives you. Kind of in the same sphere, this is something Nielsen Norman Group has done some articles. They're a UX design research organization, and they talk a lot about how viewing AI as your intern. So set them loose to work alongside you. Just know you'll need to check their work. Just to really stress, always verify using things you already know the answer to. This was a really simple example, but I gave ChatGPT an article and I asked it to summarize the design tools mentioned in the article because it was really easy for me to check that. And it mentioned several, 4 tools that weren't mentioned in the article at all. So again, you always need to there'll be an extra layer of work anytime you use AI where it's going to do the thing really quickly for you, but then you're going to have a new stream of work of needing to check and validate. So you want to have that process set up beforehand. And a good way to figure that out and how to check is by, again, using what you know. If you take one thing away, take that away. When it comes to writing prompts, I do have a helpful tip. I recommend starting really vague. Write a sloppy, messy prompt. Don't spend a lot of time on it. And then see how does this AI tool you're testing do with a really vague question. That can let you know right off the bat the more powerful versus less powerful tools. If it understands what you're getting at without you needing to write a really well-defined, super tight prompt, that tool is going to do a lot more for you and be a lot more powerful, potentially, than a tool that you need to finesse and write the prompt exactly right to get it to do what you want. So that's a good way to kind of vet initially how powerful the tool is that you're working with. when it comes to creating design assets or prototyping, I really recommend taking a screenshot of either a competitor's website or something showing what you want it to do and kind of the type of page you want, and then ask it to make something better. And this is a way of almost using these tools in place of going to Dribbble, getting inspiration from competitors, or using it alongside of those activities. Yeah, and then for conducting research, I mentioned this earlier, but you might not be able to test out using this on for real research projects yet. But if you want to explore, you can get podcast or YouTube interviews, get the transcripts, and then use that to kind of run a test and see how these tools might work for you. Same for analyzing the research. So yeah, this is a summary of the things that I just mentioned. Kind of, yeah, if you do, I would say always start small, start with what you know, see how it works for you, and then go from there. That is all that I have for you today. I would love it if you have more questions or want to continue the discussion on this topic, if you connect with me on LinkedIn. I will also be sharing more tips, videos, and articles on these topics there. So if you follow me, you'll see that. And I would also love to see if anyone else has been experimenting in this space or found useful tools or strategies. I'd love to hear those as well. One last thing is at the end of the PowerPoint slides that I've submitted, I also have another deep dive case study going into more in-depth how I used AI for a qualitative kind of mini research project, and it shows the outputs that the AI tool provided to me for this test case. A kind of sample for you to see what it might be like. Although I would encourage you to use these tools yourself firsthand. But yeah, again, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, happy to chat through any of this. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.